I think the recipe, quite frankly, for the Niners, I think they got to run the rock. I think this has to be a big-time McCaffrey run the football game because the Eagles' pass defense is excellent. When they do throw it, they got to target Adoree Jackson, number 8, because Quinyon and Cooper DeJean, those guys are really, really good.
Just overall thoughts, and how could the Niners win this game? Let's put it that way.
Well, let's start with that. I think it would be one of the more impressive victories of Kyle Shanahan's career. And I really believe that. Not that the Eagles are some unbeatable team, because they're not. But when you consider, the Niners put so much into that game on Saturday night to try to get that beloved bye, to try to get home field advantage. I mean, you heard the quotes from Juszczyk and whatever. They knew how important that was. And let's be honest, the score should not have been 13-3. They are fortunate. Now, the flip side is they could have scored on the interception off of McCaffrey's hip or whatever. But it felt like the Seahawks thoroughly dominated that game, especially physically. Meanwhile, the Eagles, more or less, all their key players got the week off, which is, I believe, critical this time of year. Now, we'll see. Maybe it ends up backfiring, but I just can tell you as a former player, man, if you would have given me a week off, you would have enabled me to feel just a little bit better towards the end of the year. I would have loved that. That would have been more important to me than anything else. So now the Niners have to go across the country and go into the Hornets' nest that is a home playoff game for the Eagles. Sirianni's never lost one. It is a very, very tough environment. And so if they go in there and get this done, man, it's super impressive. The thing is they can. I know their defense isn't good, but they only give up 13 points. Find a way. Robert Saleh, mask tape, duct tape, any kind of tape you can find, put it all together, hold the Eagles' offense under 20, which is doable because the Eagles' offense has been very inconsistent this year. And then we know the Niners' offense is electric. Now, the Eagles' defense is really, really good. But I think a reasonable outcome would be like 20-17 Niners.
Gotcha.
Somewhere there, 20-17, maybe even 23-20. Feels to me like it's a race to 20. First team that scores 20 wins, and I think the Niners can do it. Look, I'm picking the Eagles to win the game, but I don't think it's some blowout. I think it's 23-20, 24-20. And I think the Eagles, I'd be surprised if they lost, but I wouldn't be shocked.
I listened to you call that Eagle Commander game, and I thought to myself, why would Sirianni not go for the 2 seed? And then I remind myself, they're defending champs, and maybe they're like, we're not scared of anybody we get in the draw. Is there anything to that and what the Eagles may be relying on? Like, we're ultra confident whoever we host.
Well, you have to go through all the scenarios. And the day before the game, I asked Sirianni, I said, if you controlled it, if you were in the Bears situation, would you be playing your guys tomorrow? And he said, maybe, but I don't have to deal in those hypotheticals, I think the lack of control is what bothered them. Think about it. You could play your guys, your starters, and still lose the game to the Commanders. You could play your guys and win the game, but you get a couple injuries or an injury.
Yeah.
You could play your guys and win, but so do the Bears, so you accomplish nothing. If you actually kind of game theory it out and go through all the scenarios, this was the only scenario that really looked bad for them. And they knew it was a possibility, which is we play the backups, we lose, the Bears lose. But the thing is their backups blew it. I mean, they still had 10 ways. You watched the game, Guru. They still had 10 ways they should have won the game with McKee and those guys. And I do think I'm not going to call it bravado, but when you talk with those players, they just not only won the Super Bowl, but they they blew through everybody. You know what I mean? Like the NFC Championship game and the Super Bowl, they won by 30 points. So I think that they would much rather have had the week off and play whoever we got to play. Niners instead of the Packers, no problem. Play in Chicago next week instead of home, no problem. Just let us feel healthy. Let us feel rested. They would rather that than, trying to pick their opponent or whatever and still feel beat up.
If the 49ers beat the Eagles, then the rest made the Eagles rusty. And you know what I mean?
I totally appreciate you saying that.
Look back.
Yeah, Steiny, well, 1,000%. It's like there's even people that said that they liked the Eagles' decision to rest the guys before the game, and then after it played out, they flipped. They switched. Oh, no, they shouldn't have rested those guys. They had a chance at the number 2 seed. The way I've been describing it is the players kind of got to make Siriani right. Siriani more or less stuck up for them. Siriani did them a solid. Siriani gave those guys a paid week off and said, I believe in you guys. They got to go out there on Sunday and make him right. That's kind of how I look at it is, he did them a favor on some level that he didn't have to do to let them be rested and healthy, give them the week off. He had their back. Now they got to go out and have his back and perform and beat San Francisco.
Let me ask you, Guru was saying this earlier in the week, and I was like, yeah, I hear what you're saying. And he was saying, why wouldn't Saquon Barkley run the ball 25 or 30 times? But we had Mike Quick on and asked him essentially that question, and he's like, because we can't run the football effectively, and that's who we've been. So, why wouldn't you guys be able to run the football against this 49ers defense?
Well, they're certainly going to try. And the thing that they haven't done much this year that I do think they'll do in this game is use Jalen Hurts' legs, which is really tough because it gives them an extra blocker. It puts a lot more stress and pressure on the defense than the Niners already had because Darnold wasn't really a threat as a runner, at least not in the design run. So I think they're going to try. The reality is their offensive line is not what it was last year. Last year, I thought it was clearly the best in the NFL. And in the second half of games, Saquon Barkley guys had over 1,700 yards in the second halves because they would kind of wear you down. And then they'd have a lead. You'd stack the box. He'd break a 70-yarder. Good night. That really hasn't happened this year. And so that's a big difference. But they're going to certainly try. Last year I thought number 1 offensive line. This year they're probably not top 10. They've had guys in and out. The guys that are playing have been banged up. You'll see. And we'll see if the week off helped. But they're a good offensive line now. They're not a dominant one.
Real quick here, is Lane going to play? We heard he practiced. You think he's going to go?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
I'd be shocked if he didn't. The question is, does he aggravate it? Does he play the whole time? Probably the same question I would have for you guys about Trent Williams at this point.
Yeah, exactly. It looks like he's going to try, too. He looks like he's in the similar situation.
Ross, let me ask you this because you played the game, and I'm still stuck, and Steiny's like, you got to let it go. But I know Seattle's a damn good defense, but we seen Brock Purdy against Chicago, and, this whole year they went on a run doing the electric boogaloo in the end zone. They couldn't be stopped in 3 points. So Ricky Pearsall didn't play. Brandon Aiyuk, that was a debacle. But now I feel like, and I'm telling Steiny and the listeners, you're missing those explosive guys against top-tier defenses. Purdy's a good quarterback, but how handicapped is he or handcuffed is he if he doesn't have those burners on the outside going up against now the likes of Seattle and Philly?
Very, very. Because the Eagles are the toughest defense in the league to throw in the intermediate area.
Oh, man.
And they're very good underneath. And Ricky's like the one guy that it felt like could take the top off the defense, could give you the run after the catch, could beat man coverage on the outside. Jawan Jennings has had a terrific year, but it's a lot of contested catches. It's red zone touchdowns. Those things are positives for sure. Not the year he had last year, but those things are positives. But everything just kind of gets compressed. So watch the safeties for the Eagles. Watch where Blankenship is and Epps. Are they at 20 yards, 15 yards, 12 yards? You watch them and the windows just get smaller because it gets more and more condensed. Quinyon Mitchell, I think people are averaging 47% completion percentage against him, which is the best in the NFL. And then Cooper DeJean at nickel, he's 48%. There's a reason why both those guys are going to the Pro Bowl. They're going to make it. It will be tough. I think the recipe, quite frankly, for the Niners, I think they got to run the rock. I think this has to be a big-time McCaffrey run the football game because the Eagles' pass defense is excellent. When they do throw it, they got to target Adoree Jackson, number 8, because Quinyon and Cooper DeJean, those guys are really, really good.